Story 1. It depends on whether they know what they are doing. Many people put napkins into drink cups or between stacked plates. Story 2. While I appreciate it, one thing I appreciate more is this. If you are in a booth by the wall, please move your dishes closer to the edge of the table by the walkway. It is much easier for a server to pick up the dishes as they walk past than if they have to climb onto the bench to gather a pile of dishes. Edit. I think this is my highest upvoted comment ever. I am very thankful that people are reading this and that it might make their servers' lives a little easier. Thank you, everyone. Story 3. Just don't fucking put napkins at the bottom of a pint glass. Story 4. I prefer not to. For one, guests often stack plates in a way that makes them harder to carry. Second, managers often see stacked plates and assume the server is not paying attention to the table, even if the guests stacked them as soon as they finished. Story 5. I've heard people say not to do that because the bottoms of the plates get dirty. As a former dishwasher, I didn't mind them coming in piles because the whole dish gets cleaned anyway. Story 6. It depends. Some people understand while others make it more difficult. Story 7. I have no input on the subject matter. I just wanted to say I love how involved you are. It looks like this means a lot to you, and you are actively trying to get the best suggestions to be a good customer. Big props. Story 8. When I worked as a server, I appreciated guests who cleared their own table. I considered them 10 out of 10 and would send a free dessert whenever I could. Story 9. Stack plates from largest to smallest and place trash on top. Trash between plates gets wet, sticks, and creates an extra step for the dishwasher for every affected plate. Story 10. It is generally frowned upon in better restaurants. Do not do it before everyone at your table has finished eating. It is acceptable at lunch or breakfast. Story 11. It depended on where I worked. In fine dining, allow me to serve you and clear plates between courses. When I worked in an all-night Greek diner, please keep your dishes and belongings organized and stable, so I can quickly gather everything at once. Story 12. It definitely depends on the place. When I worked at dive restaurants that use baskets, or at Joe's Crab Shack, stacking items high was fine. When I worked at nicer establishments with very heavy, hand-thrown pottery in many shapes and sizes, please do not stack them, as I can hardly carry them and, if I break them, the owner will be upset. Story 13. In nicer restaurants, even those that are not strictly fine dining, it is considered a faux pas to leave before the server clears your place. The server waits until everyone has signaled they are finished and then clears the table. The polite thing to do is finish eating and place your silverware side by side on your plate, traditionally at the 5 o'clock position. Story 14. Fine dining is absolutely not appropriate. You will embarrass yourself and everyone you are with. It is casual and busy. Help them out. Story 15. I hated it. I had a system and it just ruined everything. I understand it came from a place of wanting to be helpful, so I did not care too much. Customers sometimes make gross decisions, like putting used tissues into a glass of water. Then you have to dig them out, which is disgusting. I would never do something like that, but for some reason people do it constantly. Story 16. For me, making items to be cleared accessible within reach was all I wanted. I enjoyed providing the service and did not want my guests to perform any server duties while they dined. I hated having to shove my chest or armpit in someone's face to reach a dirty plate pressed against the wall. Story 17. An observation from a customer who understands that service staff are fellow humans. We stack our used dishes with loose silverware on top so they are stable and do not spill, or we move them within easy reach of the server. We stack our menus too when we know what we will order and say thank you when the server takes them. When we do this, the server's facial expression and the way they treat us afterward are generally more positive. In some cases, the quality of service improves significantly. We do this in our family because it is polite, but sometimes it brings additional rewards. A more pleasant dining experience for the rest of the meal. That can be more valuable to the server than the tip. Story 18. They just don't want you to stuff napkins into drink glasses. Story 19. I prefer not to because the most optimal clearing style, French clearing, involves putting the silverware under the plates in your hand. The silverware is held in a two-finger grip while a large pile of plates is stacked onto your hand in order of size. When silverware is stacked on plates, it is hard to clear without getting food on your hand. Also, when guests stack plates, it gives the impression that service is lacking. That may sometimes be true, but I get stressed, not irritated, when I see someone stacking a lot. They are doing my job and I must be slacking. Story 20. Do whatever you want, just don't put your trash in the glasses. Story 21. As a customer, I thought doing a full pre-bus stacking effort looked bad for the waiter. It showed management the waiter was not being attentive. Story 22. Generally no. I appreciate the thought, but some of us have a specific stacking technique that requires balance. It's easier to empty plates onto another plate, place the cutlery on it, and stack more plates on the wrist. We can carry a surprisingly large number efficiently that way. Story 23. Bartender here. Honestly, don't do it because you usually do it poorly when you try. I appreciate the offer, but having to res-tack it is worse than doing it myself. It's nothing personal, but unless you have experience, you're likely to put a fork in the middle or a stray piece of food where it shouldn't be, and then I have to res-tack it, which is more work for me. Story 24. Please let the staff do it. We all have different ways of stacking and balancing that we are comfortable with. Thank you. Story 25. Absolutely not. Please put the plates where I can reach them and let me stack them. You're not stacking them conveniently, and it makes me look like a server who hasn't been by to clear them, so you resorted to stacking. Story 26. Like other people loading the dishwasher, please don't. My mother-in-law leaves knives pointing up, which is very dangerous. Story 27. Completely aside from the question, I once dated a girl whose father owned a bar and restaurant for decades. She and her father did something I do not see often. They made sure the manager on shift received a compliment about a server when it was deserved. Most managers only hear about servers when something goes wrong. Very rarely do they hear about the good work. Story 28. I worked in a coffee shop that sold pastries and hot sandwiches, so the job was quite different from being a restaurant server. I hated the common practice of stuffing a napkin or food scraps into the bottom of a customer's cup of coffee. Throwing away a napkin is easy and clean. Having to scoop out a soggy mess is unpleasant. Story 29. Absolutely fucking not. I can clear a table of 8 in one pass if no one starts stacking for me. Even if a table stacked plates exactly right, it is much harder to lift the weight of stacked plates with my stacking arm than to stack them myself. Nobody does it exactly right, and while I don't fault anyone for trying to help, it makes my job much harder. I'm always searching for the right wording that says, thanks, but please stop. I usually say, thank you so much, but I'm working tonight, so you don't have to worry about dishes at all. The only time I ever drop silverware or struggle with balance is when customers try to help. Like any other job, you wouldn't jump in to help your mechanic replace brake pads, hang drywall for your contractor, or give directions to your bus driver. This is my job, and I know how to do it better than someone untrained. Because my job is 25% physical labor and 75% emotional labor, it is harder to do it well when I also have to make people feel good about trying to help poorly. Story 30. No trash in drink cups, please. It is my pet peeve. I often have to fish wet trash out of cups, which is unsanitary, because ice cannot be dumped into the trash bin. Dumping liquids in the trash makes bags leak at the end of the night. Leave trash dry on the table so it can be handled quickly at the dish station when I am in a rush. If someone is going to stack dishes, place any trash together in the top bowl of an evenly stacked pile. If trash is scattered between dishes or the pile is uneven, I will have to unstack and res-tack, which takes more time than leaving the trash on the table. Story 31. Making the plate accessible is more important than stacking. If you are done with a plate, place it at the edge of the table to signal you would like it removed. Stacking is methodical. Unless you can stack it so I can grab the stack with one hand without it toppling or items falling, it is best to let me do the stacking from the outset. Do not make me reach over you or push past you to get to your plate. That is all I ask. Story 32. Do not stack the plates. You are doing it wrong and making them harder to pick up. Story 33. As long as they did it properly, I did not mind. That means stacking plates from largest to smallest, not placing silverware between stacks, not balancing awkward items on top, and not putting silverware or napkins in drinks. Please do not hand finished plates to us as we walk by, especially if we are not your table server. Do not add items to what we are currently gathering at your table. We probably have a plan for clearing the table in the most efficient way. Story 34. Please do not put trash in glasses. People think they are helping, and I appreciate the sentiment, but it means someone has to fish out wet trash. Story 35. As a former server at a Denny's or another casual chain restaurant, it is okay if you stack plates when clearing a table. At a wedding, a 4-star resort, or a high-end restaurant, I would prefer you did not. Many such places require servers to clear plates without stacking them. There is an art to doing this without getting saliva or leftover food on our hands by splaying plates in our hands and ending up with food on our arms. Also, many of these establishments insist that we clear by course, which requires us to wait for the whole table to finish a course before clearing. Stacking your plate signals that you cannot wait for that, or that you do not understand and want your plates cleared immediately. If we do that and the captain sees it, they may think we are not following directions. Story 36. No way. As a server, I had a method for clearing a table with as few trips as possible without getting injured or breaking anything. At one restaurant, I was required to clear tables in a specific order. I appreciated the offer to help, but carrying one large stack put me, other guests, and the dishwasher at risk. I asked friends and family to please never do this. What helped most was avoiding a big mess to begin with. Story 37. I never looked it up, but I always understood that it is bad manners to stack plates before they are cleared from the table. It is also rude to remove plates before everyone is finished, which irritates me in restaurants when the waitstaff do that. I am a slow eater. Story 38. Very few people do it right. Most people leave things in a way that makes clearing the table more difficult. Leftover food and napkins are often sandwiched between plates, with silverware mixed in. I would prefer that people leave the table as it is and let me do my job. Story 39. Don't touch it. I have my own system. Do not hand it to me. Story 40. If there is a blatantly obvious way to stack them, like 2 plates or bowls that are the same size, go for it. If you have to think about how to stack anything at all, do not. Your server or bartender stacks those dishes every day and knows exactly how to optimize a stack. Story 41. I would prefer you did not. Move the plates to the end of the table nearest to where the server can walk and let me stack them. Story 42. It does not help much when done correctly and creates problems when stacked improperly. Story 43. Take this as you will. It is just one restaurant from 25 years ago. When I was in high school, I worked as a busser at a fine dining establishment with a fairly toxic chef. If the chef or floor manager saw stacked plates on a table, I would have been blamed. It was a toxic environment. Plates could have been stacked for less than 20 seconds and I would still have been blamed. Because of that, I only stack plates when the server or another busser is at the table to assist in real time. The other times I stack plates are when the service is bad. I do it because no management is present to care, so it often feels like screaming into the void. Story 44. I'm not a restaurant worker, but I have occasionally done this as a patron because restaurants often use too many dishes for their convenience. For example, eggs and bacon on one plate, toast on another, and hash browns on a third. That creates clutter on a table with multiple guests and can leave no room for everything, making eating more difficult. Sometimes you just want to sit for a minute after you eat. Story 45. As a former waitress, I found it helpful when dishes were stacked from largest to smallest, with silverware and scraps placed on the top plate and no cups on top of the stack or trash inside cups. Often people tried to stack plates with trash and silverware left on each plate, which made stacks wobbly and risked staff being poked by knife tips protruding between plates. Story 46. This is such a great post. Laugh out loud. I love it when guests make an effort to help. You earn immediate bonus points from me. It does not really save me much time, but it is a very kind gesture in what can be one of the hardest jobs out there. Yes, I can tell if you have worked in service by how you arrange plates and silverware. If you are a trained professional, please help me out. I appreciate it. If you are not a trained professional, enjoy your meal and drinks and I will take care of it. The gesture of pre-stacking acknowledges that I am human, that I am working as hard as I can, and that you appreciate me. Story 47. Leave the table as it is and do not touch the plates. 9 times out of 10, as a guest you do not know what we take back to clean and what goes into the trash. The number of people who leave napkins stuck between plates or stuffed into glasses is astounding. Let the staff trained to serve you do their job. The last thing I need at 10 p.m. during my 8-hour shift is someone who thinks stacking plates with leftovers is a good idea. Story 48. Bit of a sidebar. Please don't hand me your plates and utensils when I'm trying to stack them properly in my arms. I have a process and, respectfully, you're fucking it up. Story 49. When I was a busser and server, I hated it because it almost always made it harder to pick up dishes correctly, and my restaurant was very strict about that. However, I think it is helpful in places with a more casual service style. Story 50. I have only worked in restaurants as a busser and will bus my table after I am done. I do not understand why someone in that role would not like that, as long as it is done logically. Story 51. When I was a busboy, I despised it. I had my routine set up for maximum efficiency. Stacking plates in a logical order with no napkins or food between them. If you were in a booth and moved items closer to the end, cool. Anything else? No, just pay and get out. There is a 30-minute wait for a table. I just want you all to get out of my way. Story 52. Stacking is greatly appreciated. It makes cleaning much easier when you leave. Please stop putting trash in cups. Story 53. I am the cook, waiter, and dishwasher for my family. I prefer not to stack dishes. Stacking dishes dirties the bottoms, and grease makes cleanup harder. My wife's family loves to stack dishes. Every time I leave the table, I must make sure everyone knows I am not finished eating. Sometimes, when I have not finished, I come back 30 seconds later to find my plate piled with scraps and other dishes. Story 54. I liked it when I served because about 90% of the time it made my life easier. I started doing it myself when I went out to eat. Story 55. Not appropriate for fine dining or upscale restaurants. Suitable for greasy spoon diners and casual franchise restaurants. Story 56. It is nice to serve both types of customers. Having a variety of opportunities at work is more entertaining, and it is less demanding for the dining group when they are free to be themselves. Story 57. If there is still food on the dishes, do not stack them on top of each other. If there is paper, gather it and place it on the top dish. If there is no paper, scrape all leftover food onto the top dish. Story 58. Please stop putting napkins in cups and stacking them because it is annoying. Story 59. As a former busser, I appreciated when waitstaff pre-bussed, so as a waiter I did the same. Having worked both roles, I am polite, tip well, and pay it forward. Story 60. We try to do what we would have done at home. Scrape all the leftovers onto one plate. That plate goes on top with the utensils. We stack the plates from largest to smallest, making sure the plate with leftover food is on top. When we are in a booth and need refills, we place the items at the edge of the table. First, it is more noticeable that they are empty. Second, the server does not have to reach over the table. We also try to have the person with the most substitutions order first. Should that person order first or last? Story 61. I love the intent here. It is very considerate. Stack it so it does not rattle when I pick it up. If it rattles, something is positioned so the stack can move and items can slide off. Story 62. My mother was a waitress for most of my childhood, and I learned to neatly stack plates. Scrape leftovers into a bowl or onto a single plate. Gather glasses for easy carrying. Place silverware together with all handles pointing the same way, and put trash with the food scraps, all at the edge of the table. This helps the busser or server clear the dirty dishes more quickly. Story 63. I always move the plates toward the aisle and stack them efficiently. It drives me nuts when servers take my payment and leave the dishes on the table. Story 64. No, I understand you are trying to be helpful and that's altruistic and sweet. But I've honed a system for 11 years as a waiter to stack plates so I don't get all that bullshit on my hands. They don't fall or break, and I get the inevitable person at table 11 who claps afterward. Story 65. It depends on the place. With a dedicated serving staff, I would rather they leave it. If it is a place with an actual receptacle for trays and baskets, like many small businesses and fast food chains, you are an absolute dick if you leave your table and the surrounding area covered in trash and stains. Story 66. This is not appropriate at a fine dining establishment. You may move it to the edge of the table, but do not stack items. They will be whisked away at once, and a server who is not prompt provides poor service. Story 67. As a veteran of the hospitality industry, my view is that if guests have time to clear their own table, your team is not doing its job. Story 68. I have not in a long while, but when I cleaned tables, I appreciated the thought. Tables that did that were usually better overall, even if they inadvertently created more work by requiring items to be stacked between others. Tables that did not were not always bad, but a poorly designed table makes cleanup harder. Story 69. Good post and replies. I have always wondered whether people appreciate it. It has become a game for me to see how much I can condense everything. All food goes onto one large plate or dish. Drinks and ice go into as few cups as possible, which I then stack. I remove fruit, lemons, and straws from the cups and add them to the trash plate. All napkins go together, and dishes are stacked by size and shape. The variety of dishes makes it hard sometimes. Story 70. I do not wait tables anymore, but when I did, I hated it when customers stacked their own plates for two reasons. 1. Most people are terrible at it. They put larger plates on top of smaller plates, place spoons between bowls, or stuff napkins into cups that I then have to reach into with my bare hand to remove. I do this many times a night. I am faster and more efficient. Just let me do my job. 2. Managers see stacked plates at the end of a table and assume you have been neglecting your section, so they think customers had to clear your dishes. Then you can get chewed out or have your shifts cut as punishment. Story 71. I do not care. Just please do not put your napkins in your still half-full drink cup. Story 72. Former server. Diners should not have to stack their plates. If there are plates to stack, it is because empty plates have been left on the table too long. One of my biggest pet peeves is when main courses are dropped on a table full of empty appetizer and salad plates, and the whole mess is still there at the end. Full hands in, full hands out. Story 73. No one seems to know these days that scraping or stacking dishes at the table is a breach of etiquette. That makes me feel old. Story 74. Do not do this in fine dining. I have seen servers drop silverware or nearly drop a plate, awkwardly hold the whole stack, and walk it back to the kitchen. Then someone else must pick up the dropped silverware, or the server makes another trip. This usually happens because a guest thought they were being helpful by stacking items, but created an unstable mess that begins to fall apart as soon as the staff walks away. Never do this in fine dining, especially where plates come in unusual shapes and sizes such as teardrops, oddly shaped bowls, rectangles, and little sauce cups, and so on. You cannot know how to stack them unless you own the exact same pieces. It is annoying, unsafe, and makes our jobs harder. We cannot restack items on the table. Everything must be picked up first, so we have no choice but to remove the mess. In fine dining, you pay for service. As a guest, do not reach for food while it is being delivered, do not clear or stack dishes, and do not hand items to staff unless they clearly cannot reach them. Service exists so you do as little work as possible. Ideally, after you sit and order, you sip, take a bite, and enjoy your company. Even handing a plate can disrupt service. If the server is not ready, they may have to adjust, making service less safe or requiring an extra trip. Story 75. Honestly, I never cared either way. It did not save me enough time or effort to care. As long as you do not do strange things with the dishes that make it harder to clear them, do not worry about stacking plates. I would prefer a good tip to stacked plates, laugh out loud. Story 76. Absolutely not. We will do it for you and stack it by hand so it is easier to carry. Whatever you think you are doing is not helping. We appreciate the effort, but please do not. Story 77. I always pre-bus the table. Never put paper in the cups, but I will put eating utensils in them. Never stack glasses. Servers have it rough already. Every little bit helps them. Story 78. Waitstaff, stop taking plates away until everyone is finished. It is rude and you are rushing diners who have not yet finished. If someone finishes early and asks you to remove their plate, that is fine. Otherwise, show a bit of courtesy to your customers. Story 79. I work in a more casual place and I appreciate it, but when I have dined in a few upper-class establishments, I have been told it is rude. Story 80. Choose one plate for all scraps and trash. Pick up the other empty plates and stack them with the plate containing the scraps on top so they lie flat. Thank you. Story 81. I wasn't a waitress. I was a chef. I can tell you dishwashers get incensed when you stack the dirty plates. You just make a mess on both sides instead of just one, doubling the scrubbing necessary. It's impossible not to do this when it gets busy. They become more perturbed as the night goes on. I've seen bartenders bring them drinks so they do not walk out. Dishwashers are the unseen pins that hold restaurants together. They can grind the whole operation to a halt if they get mad enough and walk. Do whatever you must to keep them happy. Beg if necessary. Story 82. Here are my preferences. Do not stack plates. If you are finished with your plate, push it noticeably away from you. Any competent server will be looking for that. Place your silverware fully on your plate, not half on the plate and half on the table. Do not leave whole chunks of food skewered on your fork. The server will take the silverware and then the plate, or both together if the silverware is resting on the plate. If your silverware is clean and the restaurant does not change settings between courses, keep the clean silverware away from the plate so staff know to save it. Also, do not use more silverware than necessary. If 2 forks are provided, 1 should be sufficient for the first course. Avoid dirtying both unnecessarily. Story 83. No stacking, please. I pick up plates the same way I put them down. I appreciate the thought. Honestly, I'm here to serve you. You don't have to do the work. Just enjoy your time out. Story 84. Please do not stack dishes for me. I am much more likely to drop something if you stack them. I may have to make multiple trips when I could have done it in one. I appreciate when guests place dishes where I can easily grab them, at the edge of the table. Otherwise, I will take care of them. Today a table tried to hand me a stack and a knife fell into a water glass, breaking it and spreading glass and water everywhere. It was very busy and a real pain to clean up. Story 85. Please do not stack dishes on the table. A stack on the table is an urgent issue. I have to drop almost everything to clear it. 75% of the time, a stack is unstable and something falls. Push your dishes aside and place your flatware together to signal that you are finished. Story 86. You can tell who has worked in restaurants by whether they stack their plates and how they do it. I always stack my plates when I am done, and on several occasions servers have thanked me, saying I must have worked in restaurants. I also typically tip well, even if the service was not the best. Story 87. Only allow customers who know how to wait tables to carry multiple plates. Otherwise, the average person will stack plates precariously with silverware, food, and napkins between them. If you have never done a 3-plate carry across a very busy restaurant on a holiday weekend, please leave the dishes to me. I will handle it. Story 88. If anything, please push them a little closer to me. There is a particular way to carry them on the arm that allows me to balance plates and silverware rather than carrying one large stack with both hands. Story 89. I stack all the dishes, put the trash and food waste on the top dish, and place the silverware in the glass. Am I doing it right? Story 90. A big issue for me is when a towel falls under the table. It is difficult for the staff to notice, but very easy for the guests to see. Story 91. Please don't. I used to have my method when I was working in this field, and helpful customers usually made it longer for me. Story 92. Another commenter suggested that instead of stacking plates, guests should move them closer to the edge of the table when finished. I agree, especially in banquets or half booths, because no one's arms are long enough to reach a full dinner plate from someone sitting in the center of the bench at a large party. Doing this clearly signals you are finished with your plate, so I do not have to interrupt your conversation to ask. Stacking can go horribly wrong, and I try to remove plates before you have time to stack them. If guests are clearing their own table, I am not doing my job well enough. Story 93. There are lots of good tips here. I will add one from my partner, a former server. Do not put used paper napkins in cups or glasses. Story 94. They usually appreciate it when guests make things easier without creating chaos. Story 95. You stack dishes to help the busser or server. I stack them to get them the hell out of my way while I wait 10 minutes for someone to pick them up. Fine dining excluded. In my area, bad service is the norm. Story 96. In certain restaurants, we prefer that you do not stack plates or utensils that way. We pick up items in a specific order and transfer them from the flatware while they are in our grip. The way people typically stack and arrange plates and utensils makes it harder for us to carry multiple items from the table. It often forces us to rearrange stacks and press the underside of a plate that was just placed over food against our hand in an unpleasant way. Although well-intended, this becomes a frustrating burden for trained staff. Story 97. Rather, they did not. Everyone has a system, typically about efficiency and balance, but sometimes even deeper, like what is easier for the dishwasher. Just let the professionals do it. No thanks. Story 98. Simple piles make cleaning up faster. Chaos makes it harder. Story 99. I stack them, but I used to be a busser, so I know how not to make it more inconvenient. Story 100. These replies make me anxious. My kids are degenerate monsters, so I always clean and stack everything, wipe down the table, pick up items from the floor, and overtip. I hope this isn't wrong. It may help that we are usually regulars, so the staff kind of knows the deal. Story 101. Tidy stacks are nice. Anything overly complicated just makes my job harder. Story 102. I am not a server. I stack dishes because I have young children and need to clear their plates when they are no longer interested in eating, or in the rare cases when they have actually finished their entire meal. Otherwise, my children will find ways to play with the dishes. With the extra space, I can give them something to color to keep their attention a while longer. I try to stack items in a favorable way for the server or busser. Large items on the bottom, utensils on top, and so on. Story 103. I did not care for it. I am carrying them and disposing of the waste. Please let me organize it. Story 104. Back in the day, I'd say no. I like to stack plates myself. There's a way to hold a plate with 3 fingers and stack plates on the wrist using the pinky and ring finger. I used the main plate I had the best grip on to hold utensils and stacked other empty plates on my wrist. It let me hit multiple tables in one trip because I could pick up utensils and plates separately. If someone stacked things for me in a hot mess with utensils between plates, or even neatly with utensils on top, I skipped their table until I had free hands because undoing their work was a pain in the ass. Ergo, multiple trips for something I could have done in one. I appreciated the sentiment as an afterthought, but not when I was working. I'd rather people let me do my damn job. Anyway, I don't miss the service industry as much now that you've reminded me of this, because there is no way to tell a customer to let us do our job without sounding rude. If I could have said what I wanted back then, stop trying to be helpful. We needed to do our jobs and stack things the way that worked for us as we were trained. You are simply in the way. Story 105. No. The only time I ever dropped a stack of dishes was when someone had stacked them and slipped a piece of baking paper between a plate and a wooden serving board. So when I lifted the stack, it all fell. Let the server do their job. Story 106. You should look at my post history sometime in the last 6 months. I asked the same question and the responses were wild. Story 107. I do not care as long as you do not stuff your napkins into your water glasses. Story 108. I stack plates because I am overweight and I go to buffets, so I need the space. Story 109. As a server for many years, I prefer that customers do not stack their plates. It makes the table look messy and gives the impression that I am not doing my job. Story 110. I hate it. I appreciate the sentiment, but no one does it well. Often they do it worse than anything I have seen. I have to spend more time res-tacking dishes that are dirty on the bottom. I get it on my hands and they become slippery. Thank you, but please stop. Story 111. We used to clean up and stack everything on one plate, including cups and silverware, but now I think it may not be considered a polite gesture. I really hope I never upset a server while trying to help. Story 112. In general, yes. Even when it is not as helpful as people hoped, the gesture is appreciated because I work around many rude, dismissive, and entitled people. It shows respect and that we are being treated as people. That said, here is how to make me and my coworkers really happy if you're going to do this. If there is paper on the plates, remove it, stack the plates, and place the paper on top. Put utensils, sauce cups, and trash on top of the stack. This prevents us from having to fish paper, napkins, trash, and utensils out from between each dish when we take them to the back, saving the time we would otherwise spend gathering everything at the table. I have seen this done a few times over the years, and it always makes my day and improves my mood. Story 113. It's nice, but I don't give it too much thought either way. I am too busy to get caught up in that stuff. Story 114. I thought it was a kind gesture. I believed they were trying to help out. Story 115. I'm a stacker. Bigger dishes go on the bottom and all leftovers on a separate plate because food weighs down napkins. I collect leftover drinks into one glass at the edge of the table when I see the server approaching. Then I order dessert before the dishes are collected. I'm usually thanked kindly. I didn't know it could cause issues. Story 116. As a busser, I love customers who do this. Tip. Put the silverware in the cups. Story 117. I went one step further. While traveling for work, I was having dinner with a coworker when I saw the waitress refill my iced tea from a large pitcher at her workstation. 20 minutes later, while my coworker used the restroom, a woman complained that she had not seen the waitress and wanted a refill. Being helpful, I grabbed the pitcher and refilled her glass. She apparently did not realize I was a customer. She complimented the Bang Bang shrimp and thanked me for the refill, then asked for more silverware. The waitress saw me returning the pitcher, so I explained that the woman had requested silverware and she took care of it. When my coworker returned, he was surprised. The waitress and her manager brought us free cheesecakes to say thank you. Story 118. My mom was a waitress her whole life. I leave my table perfectly. I stack and scrape the dishes, tidy up, and wipe it down. If I did not, she would haunt me. Story 119. Honestly, I don't care. Don't collect all your crumbs under a napkin wadded up around them. Picking up that napkin causes a huge mess. I will clean dozens of plates, but a crumb bomb? I hate you. Story 120. As a former dishwasher and cook, I stack plates neatly with the silverware on or next to them so it will not fall off. I place the trash on or next to the stack near the edge of the table, accompanied by my cash tip. Story 121. I used to get so mad at my mother when I was younger because she always did this. After I became a mother, I started doing it too. I think it's a mother's habit. Story 122. I have 10 years of experience in restaurants. Please do not. People will stack plates 10 high with bones, silverware, and other items between them, which makes the stacks unstable. When I stack plates, I place anything that would unbalance the stack on the top plate. Story 123. This is definitely a cultural issue. It is considered very poor manners to do this in the United Kingdom. Story 124. Please move them closer to me, put your hands in your lap, and lean back in your chair. I am very short and can hardly reach anything. When you stack items for me, you may be stacking them in a way that makes it difficult for me to lift them off the table. Story 125. As a former server, I like to stack items so the staff can pick up a single stack and carry it to the kitchen. I put larger plates on the bottom, smaller plates on top, silverware neatly on top of that, and glassware stacked together near the edge so they can grab everything and wipe the table. Story 126. My mom and grandmother were servers. We stack from largest to smallest. If we have a bowl, trash goes in it and the silverware goes on the top plate. If there is no bowl, we keep trash and silverware separate on the top plate so it is easy to use the silverware to scrape off the trash. We also pick up any mess the toddler left. I am not embarrassed to climb under the table. Story 127. Yes, if you do a good job, thank you very much. It's easy to grab, and I don't have to sort through the ruins and goo of your meal. Story 128. I stack dishes and trash the way my brother taught me. He has experience serving and bussing tables in restaurants, so I know what is helpful and what is not. Plates are stacked flat with bowls on top. Paper trash is crumpled inside a bowl or on a plate so it can be easily brushed into the trash can. Drinking cups are stacked together, with the top cup holding the silverware. The table is clean and dishes are placed at the edge closest to the staff for removal. I then leave a 20% tip. Story 129. I hate it. I appreciate the gesture, but it's easier to let me do it my way. There are a lot of shared plates. If I do it my way, I can clear a table of 4 in one trip. Guests often stack plates in ways that force me to take multiple trips. People stack items in unsafe ways and I can't tell how stable they are. I don't want to drop a cast iron bowl on someone. I'm leaning over a table and guests. I often have to lift something heavy at an awkward angle on a potentially slippery floor. Think about how many times a server must do that per shift or per week. It puts a lot of repetitive strain on the body. One plate at a time is gentler. Story 130. No, it is much easier to remove the plates if they are not stacked. Story 131. I always assumed it helped, but I have heard it really depends on the restaurant. Some places love it. Others prefer that you leave everything as it is. Story 132. Leave them be. I'll get them. 1. A big part of dining out is not having to do the work you would at home. This includes clearing the table. 2. Most people do not know how to stack plates, which adds time at the bus tub. Dirty napkins stacked with silverware become a precarious bundle with no center of gravity. So just leave it. I appreciate the courtesy, but clearing is part of the service. So please relax and enjoy. Story 133. We stacked our plates near the table edge for years. We have observed how our servers must climb into booths to collect dishes. They walk by, grab the dishes, keep moving, but always stop long enough to say thank you. Story 134. The best thing you can do is push any dishes you are finished with to the edge of the table and let me handle them. That tells me which dishes I can take without asking, and I can stack them myself. Story 135. I always prefer it as long as it is done right, so I do it for other people. I usually put all trash and leftover food on one plate, then stack the others underneath. All silverware goes in a cup. Story 136. I spent years bussing and waiting tables. I usually stack my dishes, but I scrape everything onto the top plate so it is not an uneven, nasty tower. I place silverware together on one side and wrap napkins and trash in a napkin when possible. It is a habit. I cannot leave a mess. Story 137. No. Although the intention is nice, I can carry more plates than you think if I stack them on my wrist in a certain way, but this requires arranging them by size and shape. Guests typically do not stack them with those factors in mind, and they often do not place utensils so the heavier part is inside the dish. Story 138. I'm horrified if I spill sauce or oil on the tablecloth. It makes me feel like an animal at a watering hole. I brush all the breadcrumbs into a neat pile. I stack the plates and put a napkin under the cutlery on the top plate so it does not slip. I put all the leftovers on the top plate. I am sorry when I do not have change in my wallet for a few euros as a tip, and I do not understand why I cannot add a gratuity to the payment so it will reach the servers in Spain. Thank you for serving us. It is a real treat to go out once in a while. Story 139. As a follow-up to my previous comment, servers and bussers are not independent contractors who simply show up and do their own thing. Restaurants have systems in place and managers are watching. Some diners find it rude to clear the plates of people who are finished while others are still eating, and others find it rude not to. I have had irritable customers hand me their plate while their companions were still eating. In my experience, this happens more often with men. The reality is that most restaurants have rules staff must follow, and they will be reprimanded or worse if they do not. Story 140. We all know what they like best. It is written right above the total. Everything else matters quite a bit less. Story 141. Stack them up. I'm not a magician. I don't see into your hands. Story 142. Yes. Stack dishes to make them easier to carry to the dish area, but use common sense. Do not stack a plate on top of another plate if there is food or utensils on it. If the stack is unstable, it will fall. In a well-run establishment, bussers use bins to collect dishes, which is less of a hassle. Story 143. As a diner, I do not care what the server or busser wants. I want the plates out of the way, and they have not removed them. Story 144. I always stack all the plates from each table. Once you start, everyone pitches in. I make sure the knives are placed with the heavier handles toward the center of the plate if I leave them there at all. Story 145. I have never worked in hospitality. I just eat out a lot. We place the largest plate on the bottom and stack no more than 4 plates, with nothing between them. Plates decrease in size toward the top. Discarded silverware and other items go on top. Place everything at the edge of your table, but do not do it so quickly that it makes the server look bad. I do not know if this is bad etiquette, but it helps my obsessive-compulsive disorder. Story 146. Former server here. He was great when it was done properly. Story 147. Stop handing me items. I have an order to stack them. Story 148. I would prefer that you finish your beverage and let me take over when you are gone. Story 149. If you stack correctly by not stacking plates with silverware on them and by placing all silverware on the top plate, then yes. However, I would not expect a guest to do this or to know how unless they have worked in the industry. I have no problem collecting and stacking plates properly. Story 150. I'm a bartender who also serves, busses tables, and helps with prep in a small restaurant. I like it because it saves me time, but I do not care a whole lot either way. The things I do care about are being tipped well, being treated like a human being with thoughts and emotions, and customers leaving when we close or shortly after. Today is Sunday, which, for some reason, means I will be stuck at work, waiting for one customer to finish scrolling on their phone, until 2 hours after I was supposed to go home to my family. Story 151. If you're going to do it, stack plates by size and make sure they're cleared. Stack silverware on the top plate or in a bowl or basket so it doesn't make the stack lopsided. Tidying up is appreciated. Ensuring items you're done with are clearly separated so we can pre-bus makes life easier for everyone. Story 152. I was a server assistant for years. If you're going to stack plates, place food scraps, silverware, and napkins on the top plate, and set the glasses near the walkway because they can get stuck together depending on their shape. I always appreciated it when this was done properly. Story 153. Not exactly related, but I work in food service at a hospital. The number of times we find bloody tissues, urine-soaked towels, and other gross items thrown into meal trays when we return them for washing is astonishing, and we absolutely hate it. Story 154. When I bus tables, I appreciated when people did not leave a whole goddamn mess on the table, the seats, and the floor. Story 155. I always think it's a nice gesture, but I prefer to do it myself. I have a process. Story 156. I don't mind as long as you did not leave an absolute mess at the table. That means no napkins, silverware, or food on the floor, no emptied sauce packets or salt shakers on the table, and no spilled drinks. Story 157. I am no longer a busser, but I prefer that you leave it alone. I have a specific method for stacking things, and when you try to help, you tend to slow me down. Story 158. I always stack plates, with any leftover food on the top plate. Napkins or trash usually go in a basket if there is one, or on the top plate as long as it is not so full that anything will fall off. I do not stack cups, but I group them together. Silverware usually goes in a cup. Am I doing it wrong? Story 159. I scrape leftovers onto one plate, then stack it on top of the other plates. I place silverware on a napkin and pile trash on another napkin. I pour ice and drinks into cups and arrange everything so you can pick it up in a single grab like a claw machine. I am curious whether I am doing anything wrong and I am willing to change. Story 160. I work in a higher-end sushi restaurant. I appreciate coworkers trying to help, but it looks bad for me because we are expected to stay near the table so they do not feel the need to stack or help. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.